Hello, my name's Natasha and today I'm going to talk to you through the last 5 books that I've read, my recent reads, and they are books number 31 to 35 in the year 2020. So we'll start off with the first one, which was The Switch by Beth O'Leary. I had this as an e-arc very kindly from NetGalley and the publishers, but this is out now. It's out as I'm filming this, so it will definitely be out by the time this video goes live. And I was wrong to base my decision, or I believe it's wrong to base your decision on whether to read this book based on your opinion of The Flat Share, because The Flat Share is romance based and this book is more about family dynamics, and there is a little side story of romance, or there is a bit of sprinkling of romance in there, but the primary focus is about family. So it's about family dynamics, it's about loss and how individuals cope with loss and grief differently, and we follow the relationships between 3 generations of women in the same family. We primarily focus on a grandmother and granddaughter, but there is a mother in there as well, and they've all lost a member of their family, and we focus with the grandmother and the granddaughter because they're the ones who do the switch. So what they do is for 2 months they swap lives, so they live in each other's house, they have each other's phone, and they get involved with things within their sort of community or where they live. This book's a bit more PG than The Flat Share because it isn't as romance based, but it's deeper in terms of the emotions and the problems that people have and things. So I really enjoyed this book. I really enjoyed the older characters that were represented in the book. It was good to see them represented, and they were done well as like fully functional characters, fully formed individuals. They weren't just like a little side person. They were in there, and it was a wholesome, lovely read that would suit adult readers of all ages. It stayed with me after reading it, and I just think it was brilliant. So I gave this book 4 stars. My battery just went, so we may have moved a little bit in this scenario, but hopefully we're still the same. But I really enjoyed that book. It was just emotional, it sort of stuck with me, and it was wholesome and sweet, and it was lovely, and I really enjoyed it actually, and I've enjoyed it more since reading it. It's one of those ones that I've kind of gone back to and thought about a lot. Yeah, and I'd recommend it to you. And if you didn't like The Flat Share, that doesn't mean to say you won't like this book, because I believe that they are quite different in the style. Not necessarily the writing style, but it's not mainly a romance. There is a little bit of romance in there, like I said, but I think you should give it a go. So the second book, which is book number 32 that I read, is called Never Saw You Coming, and I've forgotten who this is by, so I'll have to put it on the screen somewhere. And I also received this as an e-arc. And in this we follow a lady called Zara who leaves Dubai and comes to the UK. She goes to Liverpool to meet a guy called Nick, who she met him once in Dubai, and they've had a 6-month sort of internet relationship, and she decides to surprise him and to come to Dubai, and come from Dubai to Liverpool to surprise him, and she's going to live with him and live out a life together. On her first day in Liverpool, she literally bumps into another guy, who I've forgotten the name of, can only remember Nick. And this guy works at a toll booth. He's got a pretty mediocre life, and he's just a bit unhappy really with his lot, but he's just soldiering on, taking care of his mum, and that's about it really. And the majority of the book is following these 2 characters throughout a day, and I would say probably a good 80–90% of it is following them around throughout a day, and it's slow and it's a bit dull. I feel uncomfortable actually giving sort of negative reviews, so I'll just say that I didn't particularly care for the characters. I didn't mind whether they got together or not. I didn't care what happened to each of them, and to be honest, I wouldn't really recommend it. But maybe if you like more of a sort of slower paced book, where not much happens, then maybe this would be your sort of book. If it wasn't an e-arc, I will admit that I would have DNF'd it. But I was given this book in exchange for an honest review, and I felt in order to do that I would have to finish it. So it didn't take me that long. It probably took me a day to read it, but I wouldn't have been able to give an honest review if I hadn't finished it. It might have turned it around for me or something. So unfortunately though, I didn't enjoy it, and I gave this 2.5 stars. Book number 33 that I've read this year is called Sorry I'm Late, I Didn't Want to Come, and this is by Jessica Pan. I listened to an audiobook of this, and it is read by Jessica Pan herself. And this is a non-fiction story, and we follow Jessica, who's she's a shy introvert, otherwise known as a shintrovert, which I've never heard of before. And she is trying to be more extroverted for a year. She's decided that it's something that she wants to push herself out of her comfort zone, and she wants to try and become more extroverted and do things that extroverts would do, and to see how that affects her life. I would say this is quite interesting, and I don't usually, I read non-fiction, but not as much as fiction. And because of the way that it was told, she's got a really, I enjoyed her writing style and her reading style. And so it felt like a story. And she talks about things that I really enjoy, like the moth and things like that. So it was interesting to hear about the impacts that it was having on her life. But I did feel that certain people that are introverted, how do I put this? Some people are not just introverts because they're just shy. Some people have like panic attacks when they're around big groups, or they have bigger problems, I believe, that I would say. And whilst she doesn't say to people, you just need to get out there and do it, some of the things that she gets out there and does, I think many people would really struggle to do. But it was still good to read. I just feel that certain introverts would read this and be a bit like, not a chance in hell that I could do any of those things. For example, stand up on stage and do a full comedy set. Essentially, I gave this 3.5 stars. I'm not an introvert, but I feel that people who are introverts that really struggle with lots of things, they may only really like the first half of the book, not necessarily the more sort of out there things from the second half of the book. Maybe, I don't know. Ooh. Book number 34 is the only physical book that I read out of these books, and it is Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. And I have been meaning to read this for a long time. My sister-in-law, I suppose she's not my sister-in-law, my brother probably wouldn't like me calling her that. My brother's girlfriend told me to read this book. She recommended it to me a long time ago, and it's been on my shelves for quite a while. But it's about a virus that kills 99% of the population, and this book is actually following that. It isn't about the virus taking place, it's about the communities and the way that people live and the life that happens following this pandemic. And I thought that it was quite an opportune time to read it. Certain people, obviously, if you feel anxious about the current situation, then maybe this isn't the right thing for you to read. I enjoyed it, but I expected more from it. I gave it 3 stars, and I just felt like not a lot really, not necessarily not a lot happened, but I wasn't as invested in it. I think I would have preferred it if it was more of a scientific novel. So if it was more of like I Am Legend type, that sort of film, that sort of book, rather than this, which is, it discusses a lot about, it's quite interesting in the way that different societies are built, and that people create hierarchies and how all of that happens. That's all quite interesting. we do tend to follow a few characters and they come together in certain ways, and that's quite interesting. For me, this book was a good 3 stars, but it wasn't the outstanding book that I was hoping for it to be. But maybe I would have enjoyed it more if it was more of a sci-fi rather than a discussion on society and things like that. Maybe it was just too highbrow for me. But yes, 3 stars from this. Ooh. And the final book that I'm going to discuss in this video, which is book number 35 in 2020, was a book called To Have and to Hoax. I don't remember, yet again, I don't remember the name of the author. And this was an e-arc that I kindly got from NetGalley, and this book is out now. And it's this lady's debut novel, and she, I believe, is a librarian, a children's librarian, I think. This book follows James and Violet, and they've had 1 year of good marriage, and then they've had 4 years in which they don't speak to each other. They are estranged, not talking, whatever you want to call it. Now, we're also set in around, I can't remember if it's sort of 1812, 1815, something around that time. And James and Violet end up, when they do start communicating, they do it to lie and trick each other. So James has an accident, he falls off a horse and hits his head. A letter is sent to his wife to tell Violet that he's had this accident, and she goes and like runs to be by his side. But actually James has recovered fine, and I guess it's just the nature of things taking a day to get to different places, letters and everything, in that he's actually recovered fine by the time that she even gets not even halfway to him. And she gets quite offended and then decides that she's going to get some revenge on him, and she's going to try and get a rise out of him, and she's going to pretend that she too is now sick and see if that gets any sort of reaction out of him. And so 90% of this book is about them basically lying and trying to trick each other, and I don't know, it goes a little bit too far, really, in my opinion. Some of it was kind of funny and I quite enjoyed aspects of it, but this miscommunication or non-communication actually ended up hindering my enjoyment of what was an otherwise fun book. I felt that because it took up like 90% of the book, only like 10% of it actually became them talking to each other, their relationship and other things. So I would have preferred there to be less of that, more of interaction of them as a couple, or yeah, I don't know, it was good to see an actual couple. Often romance or just books that I read tend to be people getting together, and I quite liked that they were an actual couple already, they were already married. So I enjoyed it. It was just a good 3 stars for me. It was quite enjoyable, but I just felt frustrated with the communication or lack of communication, and I felt like if they'd just communicated way back when, they didn't need to not speak to each other for 4 bloody years over what it ended up being about. So that was frustrating for me as a reader, but at the same time I still kind of enjoyed it. So if historical fiction and romance is your cup of tea and you don't mind miss or non-communication, you quite like people sort of trying to play tricks on each other, getting rises out of each other, then this book could really suit you. So it's called To Have and to Hoax, and it's fun. It's out now. So there we have it. That was my last 5 recent read books. Out of those, my favourite by far was The Switch. Really enjoyed it, and it's made me look at my shelves and try and think about picking books that have older characters. I have got The Little Old Lady That Broke All the Rules and The 100-Year-Old Man Who Climbed Out a Window and Disappeared, or something like that. So maybe I need to give those a go, because I quite liked having older characters. I quite enjoyed that, but I enjoyed lots of aspects about The Switch. It was a really good book. So I would say that one was my favourite out of those 5. I would love to hear what your recent favourite book has been, or your most recent read, and what you thought of it. And yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching. Take care, and I hope to see you next time. Bye bye.